will just squeeze pancreas and you will get lots and lots of insulin. Pancreas also produces a lot of other things, including the digestive enzymes, if you remember. Remember that? Pancreas is both exocrine and an endocrine organ. Remember digestive system, class 11th?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So with the traditional way of extracting insulin from other animal sources and putting it and using it for medicine, as a medicine for therapeutic purposes in human diabetic patients, was not very scalable. You will not get a lot of insulin. It will never be enough for people who are suffering from diabetes. But with this genetically engineered insulin, that problem is solved, because now we are synthesizing the two different chains of insulin in bacteria, in bacterial cells, right? Chain A and chain B without the chain C now. And then we can join them together by creating disulfide linkage. So it can be, it's scalable. You can just make as much insulin as you want. Correct? Do you understand? So scalability means to scale it up, the production, to scale up the production. So that can now be done in big bioreactors containing, thousands of liters of reaction where these bacteria produce these protein. Okay. This peptide
Yes.
A and B, and then it can be, both strands can be joined together. So that's the scalability part of insulin. Is that clear, Shaheen?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, you're welcome. Yes, others. So I'm seeing Lubna and Aisha joining. Hello, Lubna, Aisha, Atif, Hiba, and Donna. How are you, Aisha? Long time. Where were you?
Hi, what about you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so here only. Where will I go? Where were you?
Oh, actually, I was having exams. So.
How did your exams go? Yeah.
Kind of okay. Like we can say neutral.
Neutral. Okay. I don't know. I don't know what neutral means in terms of damage. Like, did you manage to do what you wish to do?
Like for me, it was kind of hard.
It was hard. Okay. And so how was biology in general? Like, how was it?
Not
Sorry?
actually, bio was easy, sir.
Your voice is lagging, so I'm not able to understand you completely. I think you have a network issue at your side, Aisha.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyways, no issues. When you think that your network is stable, you can just tell me what you were telling. Okay, in the meanwhile, anyone has any doubts which they want to clarify regarding any chapter that we have done? So let me just show you the things list basically. So what we have done till now is this portion, right? So we have, let everyone come in. You can go back and see if you have any doubts in any of the things that we have studied till now. Anyone else? Yes, Aisha.
Actually,
Aisha, your voice is it lagging for everyone or is it just me?
Yes, so it's lagging for us also.
It's lagging. Aisha, your voice.
Doubt in chapter. Hello.
I think now we can hear you. Yes, Aisha. I think there is a network issue on your side. So you would like to reconnect, will be maybe that can put things in order. Let everyone join in. Yes, Aisha says chapter 6, which is the molecular basis of inheritance, is kind of, she finds it hard. So is there any specific doubt, Aisha, that you would like me to go through? If it is the whole chapter itself, then what we can do is we can, as we have planned, we'll first finish the whole syllabus, and then we will go for the hardest part of the syllabus into a revision mode kind of classes. If there is something specific that you would like to ask, we can take it as a doubt. If it is the whole chapter, then we can do it in one of the revision. So I have planned the revision in this way. So I'll first I'll go by units, not by chapters when we will be revising. So like reproduction unit in general, talking about mostly the difficult part there is the plant and the animal human reproduction. Then we'll talk about genetics and biotechnology together, because both includes DNA, RNA, and how you change or modify the chemistry of DNA and RNA. And then I'll go to evolution and diseases. Okay, that's how the broader revision plan is. So anyone has any specific doubts? If you cannot speak, you can write in the, people can write in the chat. Just go through your notes and let me know if anyone has any doubts. Meanwhile, let me see your. So we have to begin, I think, the ecology part, right? That's the so how's the status of the ecology unit for your schools, people? None of the chapter is omitted or deleted, correct? As per your school
Yes,
syllabus,
sir.
it's all there. Okay, great. So no one has any doubts? Anything you want me to go through?
No, sir.
No?
Chapter 16 is deleted.
From your syllabus or CBSE in general?
I think syllabus.
It is, so it should not be, I think it should be
I
deleted.
think it's CBSE deletion.
Yeah, because I don't think schools can delete chapters that way. You have to give boards, right? So I think it's CBSE. Anyway, so let's see what chapter is.
And also, in chapter 13, isn't it only population? Organisms and populations is only population.
Yeah, just so there are chapter 16 you are saying, which is environmental issues, correct? Anyways, that chapter is very basic. It has nothing much in it. Let's see the first chapter of ecology. Let me open the CBSE syllabus. Yeah, so it's organisms and population. So you're saying that what is deleted?
Organisms is deleted.
Organisms. There's no point deleting organisms anyways, because organisms is not much. Okay. But I think that doesn't help much, because many things that is there in the organism portion. So let me do one thing, because this portion will come, it's already a part of evolution. So many factors that affect population, we have already talked about most of them when we were studying evolution, right? Darwinian, and Lamarckism, correct? So let's just start with the unit, and let's start with chapter 13, organisms and populations. Can everyone just confirm me if the organism part is deleted from everyone's syllabus in the meanwhile? Chapter
Yes, sir, it's deleted.
13. Because see, I have to talk about it. It's like without talking about the letters, we cannot start writing sentences. It's the same thing. Organisms make a population. So maybe what they want you to not focus on is the individual factors affecting organisms, because we have already studied it indirectly in evolution, and that's why. So organisms and populations, great. Okay, so very quickly, what do you think is organism, and what do you think is population? Taking example of something, like anyone? When I talk about organisms, what should I not talk about? And when I talk about populations, what should I not talk about? Or opposite, when I'm talking about organisms, what should I focus more on? Versus when I'm talking about populations, what is the other thing that we have to focus more on? You can take humans, for example, talk about human as in one individual organism, like me or Shaheen or Atif, we all are. So organism is the basic building block, like entities, correct? In a population, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Do you also agree that the same organism can be a part of different population sets depending on how I am defining a population? So if I say, let's say on planet Earth, if I'm saying the population of females, correct? Then every female will come under that population term, right? If I'm doing a study where the population definition is the female gender, the population of female gender, then it's all the females will be taken into account. But if I say, if I change the population living in arid region or desert region, so there everyone who's living in desert region or arid region, depending regardless of every continent or every country, comes into that population study. Do you understand this?
Yes.
Yeah. Now it's clear that population, obviously, on the factors on which organisms depend. Populations, though, they also depend or they are affected by the same factors, but they are not affected the same as, like the trend of that effect is not same as of the organism. For example, at an organism level, the physiology of that organism plays a very important role, correct? So if I say that temperature affects 90% of the organism in a negative way, let's say rise in temperature affects 90% of the organism in a negative way. But when it comes to population, you know that the 10% which are not affected, or which might still find a way to survive, they will keep that population going forward. Even if organism dies, if an individual organism dies, population can still continue, correct? Is that clear, everyone?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now, what could be different? So let's first talk about the environment regarding both. So organism basically are individual entities that give rise. Population is a group of organisms defined under some common attributes. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, let's take an example of COVID. So COVID affected different individuals differently, correct?
Yes, sir.
But what did it do to the human population in general? We don't have a long-term data of what COVID can do and continue to doing, because it's just been 3 years and we are still studying the effects. But in general, what do you think? Like, was population very majorly or severely affected? Human population was very severely affected?
Yes.
There was a decrease in
Trans-
population.
There was? How much do you think was the decrease? Just last week, human population touched 8 billion mark. The estimated will 8 billion. Probably it will be more than that. So we are 8 billion humans on the planet. And if you look at the human growth index, we all thought that it will decrease during in the last 3 years. It should have decreased, right? Because people are dying because of a pandemic. But it happened to be opposite. There were more, the birth rate increased at many regions in the world. And the human population as a whole, the population dynamics, instead of regressing, it just kept on a steady increase. It was not like earlier pandemics where, have you heard of a pandemic called Black Death that happened in Europe and England? Majorly it affected the Great Britain. So on some islands, some regions, around 50% of the population was wiped out by that pandemic. So that is a serious blow to the population. If you lose 50% of a population, which means every second person is dying, which means 50% is the fatality rate for that disease. Whereas in case of COVID, do you know what was the fatality rate in case of COVID? How many percentage? How many people out of 100 died due to COVID? Those who got COVID. So those who did not got COVID were protected or immune. That's a different story. Also, we have different kinds of vaccines and better health infrastructure to save people. So that's also putting in. But it was a very big, widespread pandemic. But the way it was managed in general, like I'm not talking about specific country to country or region to region strategies, but how humanity like went through it doesn't seem to have a very major effect on the human population. We are still alive, growing and kicking steadily. Okay, so do you understand how when we study it on an organisms level, some of the severe symptoms are so severe that you will get pneumonia-like symptoms, the person's brain will die, so the brain death will happen first and then the body will die. It will be very, very painful death in many situations. But when we talk about population, we look at very different parameters to assess the effect. Make sense, people?
Yes, sir.
So in terms of lethality or fatality, COVID is it's a very, very weak, not weak, but we just managed, or humanity just managed to came out of it strongly without a major dip, okay, in the whole population size. So the death rate was less than 1% in some regions, and the maximum in some regions was still less than 3%. So not more than 2 to 3 people in 100 died due to COVID. And again, the 97 which survived, out of which even if 20 or 25 were in reproductive age, the birth rate was even higher during the pandemic. So do you understand how population dynamics are taken into account, different from organisms dynamic?
Yes, sir.
Just an example. Okay, great. So organisms, always we study organisms with respect to its environment. So what kind of environment organisms lives in, and that is also important for population dynamics. So let's not skip it entirely and go through some of the concepts. So tell me, when I talk about environment, what all different environments can you think? where populations or individuals, both organisms or their populations, live in. Major, we call them as major biomes. So there is a term called major biomes. Okay, major regions where life is surviving, and depending on how different these biomes are from each other, we will also see adaptations in organisms that will be different from each other, when you will do a comparative study within biomes. So what are the major biomes? Anyone, any idea? Let's start with desert. I would like to start with desert. It's the easiest one, so let me pick it. Now tell me, what other things, major biomes you think exist
Grassland.
where life also exists? Yes, grasslands. This does not have to just be in India or any specific country, in general. So there are deserts, there are grasslands, and
Tropical rainforest.
tropical rainforests. Great. Tropical. I like that you added the word tropical rainforests. Rainforests can be sustained in tropical environment only, but yes, tropical rainforests. And that's it.
Oceans.
Sorry.
Sir, any biome, right?
Yes. Like the major biomes where you see like organisms surviving and thriving and their populations existing.
Yes, sir. Oceans.
Oceans. So yeah, you went to oceans. Let's go before going to oceans, can we see sea coastal areas, which are on one side water, one side land? So that also is a different kind of biome, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And then talking about oceans, sea and ocean life, which is like basically we're talking about aquatic biomes. So this won't come, this is not included in terrestrial. So this is the aquatic one. These other ones are terrestrial. Okay. So I think your syllabus mainly focuses on terrestrial biomes, but okay. And any other? Yes, Aisha.
Sir, tundra also comes in this biomes, right? Like it's it's like, I guess it's the coldest place or something like that.
Yes, we divide the whole planet basically in 3 regions, depending on how much sunlight and how much, like depending on temperature and sunlight. So there is tropical, temperate, and tundra. Okay, so these are regions, but I'm asking about biomes. So in tundra, what do you think, where is major populations? Like, you're right, there are populations in tundra region as well, but what will we call it? Where do you see these populations of walruses, seals, dolphins, right? I think this is what Aisha is talking about. Yeah. Yes. So Iceland's and Iceland is actually, it doesn't have that much of ice, it's kind of weird. So Iceland is green. If you see it, most of the time of the year, it's green, lush green, and Greenland is white. It's always completely covered with ice most of the time. So yes, so these Greenland regions, so tundra regions. Okay, so because that will be a little extreme for us to study, so I'm keeping tundra. I'm also keeping sea or ocean away, but just because you said, let's just include it. So the tundra region, which is also okay, populations live there. You won't see much of plantation there. That's why I'm taking it out. Also in the sea oceans, you don't see much of plantations. So we are keeping these 2 currently a little out of the scenario. Anything on terrestrial? Desert, grassland, tropical, sea coastal areas? Anything else?
I guess temperature forest. I guess I'm not sure.
so these are the tropical rainforests. Temperate forests are, they are called something, they have a name. You're right. What are they called? So tropical rainforests are called evergreen forest. You know why? Because the trees do not shed their leaves at one single time, and whenever you look at the forest looks green, and there is always raining, the water is much, resources. But you're right, there are forests which do not behave like that. There are biomes or ecosystems where the plants decide to shed their leaves. Most of the plants shed their leaves at one point of time, and then they get new leaves. So those are called deciduous forests, right? Deciduous forests. Is that clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Now, because talking about India, because NCERT would like you to know about the Indian major biomes. So which of these you think are present in India? So we'll just tick it. Are there deserts? Yes, we have a Thar desert. Yes, Aisha.
Tropical rainforest.
Where are tropical rainforests in India?
Meghalaya, I guess somewhere.
Yes. Do we have grasslands? Major grasslands?
Yeah.
Not that much actually. There are, but those are not that kind of. Do we have sea coastal regions?
Yeah.
Yes, we have
Yes.
half of India is just inside, looping inside the sea. Do we have deciduous forests? Of course, we have deciduous forest. To some extent, we also have grasslands now. I don't so.
So,
Yes.
would mangrove forest be considered as a biome?
Yes, it will be considered as a biome. It's a good one. So, marshy or mangrove forest, right? And let me tell you, this is also present in India, right? Because, and to an extent, you know about Sundarbans in Bay of Bengal? The Sundarban Delta, the Sundarban forests. So major region of Sundar, it's a delta, because the major rivers, Ganga, Yamuna, Brahmaputra, they all merge there, and they then merge with the Bay of Bengal. And because of that, that area is very, very marshy, and there are mangrove forests to an extent where the adaptations have even reached the mammals, terrestrial mammals like tigers. So there are tigers in Sundarban forests, which are very, very
Yeah, I
different.
guess it's famous for that only, right? It's
Sorry?
famous for Bengal tigers. Sundarbans National Park, something like that.
Yes, I'm talking about the Bengal tigers. And the Bengal tigers in the Sundarban Delta have adapted to such an extent where they are very, very different from the tigers which live in the central India or towards, like, in the terrestrial region, more away from these mangroves. So they have developed, if you weigh these tigers, data suggests that these tigers have become lighter in weight, and they are better swimmers. They are adapting themselves to just hunt while swimming, and just always be around or in the water, because there is not much of very dry soil or dry land in the Sundarban Delta. So that's an amazing thing, where you see that tigers, similarly, tigers which live in very, very, about anyone know about snow leopard?
Yes, sir.
How snow leopards have adapted different from the other leopards which live in the jungle. Snow leopards, if you look at their tactics, their hunting, they're both leopards, but they are becoming distinct different species because they have different adaptations. So similarly, we are seeing in the case of Bengal tigers, which are living in these mangrove forests. So it can be a major biome. Okay. Okay, that's a great point. So you understand that environments affect not just the organism, but the population in general, correct? Now there is a word which might be asked, if not in your boards, but in your entrances, you should know this. It's called niche. Anyone knows what do we mean by niche? N-I-C-H-E, niche. It's called niche. What do you mean by niche?
Like
As
the
there's
actual meaning is like
Mhm.
details, like specific
Expertise,
details.
specific details. This is the actual meaning of this word niche in English literature. So how can you're right, you're correct. So how can you take that meaning, overlay it on the word, and tell me what it means in context of population and their environment?
I guess like specific details about like the population and the environment, like how many, like you
Mhm.
know.
You- Go on, you're going correct. Can you take an example and just explain it so that I know that you understood it correct? Talking about the Bengal tigers, let's say. So every organism, because it has lived, like the whole population over generations has lived in a particular type of environment. After a time, there is a range that organism or the population, like even maybe the population can tolerate more, because some organisms in that population will not be affected that much, but other organisms will be affected. So but for every organism there is a range, which is a range of conditions that it can tolerate staying in that environment from a very long generational time, right? So so if you make the resources very, very diverse, okay, and every resource's functional role for that organism. For example, if I ask you that which population of tigers will survive more or to a greater extent or have a better chance of survival in water logged areas, the tigers from the Sundarbans or the tigers from, let's say, Madhya Pradesh? People, am I audible?
The Sundarban.
Sundarbans, right? Because they have developed their own niche in which they survive the best. Okay, so that's called niche. So niche is where every organism's range of conditions that it can tolerate, plus the diversity in the resources it utilizes, and its role in the ecological system. So for example, a tiger in Sundarban has a very important role still as a predator, because it has adapted itself to hunt even those organisms which normal tigers living in Madhya Pradesh, and I'm calling them normal because they're same as they were on land, so as normal tigers do not do. So that you will see that it has changed. Okay, so they normal tigers, so you will not find a lot of deers in Sundarban, like in the mangrove region, because deers are not there. So these tigers can even hunt big reptiles, bigger reptiles and other birds which are heavier birds. They can even hunt that and eat that. And if they find nothing, then there's a high probability of becoming man-eaters, because humans are available everywhere, even in these mangrove regions where people live around these mangrove forests. So they become an easy prey for tigers. So, but if you see in Madhya Pradesh or other parts of the country where tigers are there or tiger reserves are there, there are grazing animals which are prey for these tigers, correct? So there the tigers are not going after reptiles or birds or snakes or humans. They're going after the deer. So you understand the difference? But one thing which is there is they are predators. Okay, they are predators in both. So they are adapting as per the requirement to stay a predator. So their role in the ecological system, the resources, how varied the resources are, its diversity, how they utilize the resource, and most important, what is the range of different conditions that these organisms can tolerate. So all this taken together makes one niche. Okay, so different populations of the same organism can live in different niche and perform the best there. If you take them out from their niche and put it in another niche, it will take them time, or they will not be able to perform that good in the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so just write down niche consists of many factors taken together. Such as first, the range of conditions that organisms can tolerate in that habitat, the range of conditions that organisms can tolerate. Second, the diversity of available resources, and its utilization. Okay, these are the major ones. And third, you can also say a functional role of the organism in the ecological system. Functional role of the organism in the ecological system. Okay, makes sense, everyone? Is that clear? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, now coming to what factors can affect organisms in general, just the organisms, not the population. So we are not talking about the in broader terms, but so since this part is deleted, but I will just discuss it still in a little detail, so that when it comes to population, you can understand what to write. So what factors do you think affect organisms? We have already discussed it in evolution, or in plant physiology and human physiology also you must have studied. So there are two kind of factors that every organism can be affected by in its environment, correct? These are called biotic factors.
Sir, we can't hear you.
Am I audible now? Was I lagging? Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Was I lagging?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now clearly?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So I was just saying that you people quickly will tell me that you have already studied this. What factors can affect an organism in its environment? So there can be two different broad kind of factors. One is called biotic factors and the other is called abiotic factors. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So what are biotic factors? This we also have discussed. The other organisms, right? So biotic factors mostly we will talk about when we will discuss populations, because biota means the other organism. And biotic factors, let's keep biotic factors aside for now. But what are the major abiotic factors that affect organisms?
Temperature.
Temperature, very good. Temperature is one, I think, one of the most important abiotic factor, and that's what defines the that's what also defines the temperate, tropical, and the tundra region. So how does temperature affects? Just a quick discussion. Take an example and tell me that, see, this is how temperature affects the organisms. A very simple thing is, so is this chapter covered in your schools? Anyone in whose school this chapter has been covered already? It has been covered in Dona's school. Atif, you can raise your hands and tell me. So 2 people. For others, it's not covered. Okay, Hiba and Fatima also, it's covered. Okay, so did they completely? So you can put your hands down, people. Yeah. So your school teachers, did they completely left the organism part?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So okay. So could you understand the population part? I'm assuming that you will be answering in population part then. But this is just the basics. So you should like, I feel that, you know, for me to have you understand things better, will not go into much of details, but just the common things. So temperature affects, it's not like it does not affect population. Just because book has certain what do you say, discrete categories, it does not mean that, you know, what affects the organism does not affect the population. Okay, anyways, but tell me temperature quickly. Because I'll be using many of these references when I'll be talking about population. I don't know how your teachers managed to, I think you allowed them to go through it, like go away with it. So temperature will affect every organism on the planet. That's why you do not find polar bears in India and you will never find camels in Greenland. Correct?
Yes.
You will not
Yes, sir.
find mango trees in Iceland, and you will not find some indigenous vegetation that can only grow there in India based on temperature. Correct? So temperature defines major organisms and also defines their population, by the way. Okay, so because when global warming happens, it's a shift in temperature. It's not like just one organism is affected. It's like the whole population is affected. So that's why you should know what we are talking about. Okay, so temperature is one. And what is the range? What is the mean average temperature of planet Earth? Anyone knows? The mean average. Mean average means taking into account every different biomes and their temperature and then just dividing it by whatever number of biomes you have taken. So what is the mean temperature of Earth?
Not sure, sir.
Not sure. So it's somewhere around, the specific is 14 degree Celsius, right? To be very specific, it's 13.9 that we take now. And you know, even if it if the range that Earth can and the biomes can tolerate, the mean, the range for the mean is 13.9 to 15.1 is what is assessed. If it even just 1 degree rise, like from 14 to 15 when you go, if it goes to 15 to 16, it's a chaos. You know that just 1 degree rise, you will like, what is this? How will we feel 1 degree? But it's not absolute temperature. Remember, it's the mean average. So mean average becoming rising means in general, all the biomes are getting hotter, correct? If colder biomes were getting colder and hotter biomes were getting hotter, then the mean will stay the same, correct? Make sense? It will not go
Yes,
into.
sir.
But if the colder biomes are getting less colder and the hotter biomes are getting hotter, the mean will shift. Now that shift will be very, very slow. So that's why we often don't care about it. But from 14 degrees Celsius, if it goes to 15, then it goes to 16. It's a very, very major shift, and many populations, not just organisms, but populations will be wiped out. For example, the most vulnerable of the populations right now are those living in the colder regions, like in the tundra region, because ice, they have adapted to live in ice, burrow in ice, predate in ice. But now ice sheets are melting and they're like big chunks. So every chunk is very big, but they are now getting disconnected from each other. Okay, so you will see a large population stuck in one major ice sheet, and over time what they have to do is they have to get into the water where they are very vulnerable of getting predated. Their population will decline and they will go extinct over time. So that's how they are dying, especially polar bears and your seals, walruses, all these. Okay, apart from temperature, anything else quickly?
Air.
Air. Yes, how, what air and how air?
More specifically, oxygen.
Oxygen. So oxygen, what is happening to oxygen? Oxygen, I think, is constant. No, it's not increasing, not decreasing, is it? Last I
No,
checked.
it's not.
So then how oxygen is stable? Then why are you taking oxygen? You could have taken something like CO2 or the greenhouse gases, right? You're right. So atmosphere also plays a major role, specifically the gases in atmosphere that have the capability to trap heat of the sun. And that is CO2 and methane and other gases which are combined called greenhouse gases. So they are increasing in the atmosphere. Now again, they're increased. So if you know that CO2 is already how much, what is the fraction or what is the composition of CO2 in our atmosphere in overall? How much by percent CO2 is present in the atmosphere? This is some 5th grade EVS stuff, people. I'm sure you all have done it. Of course you have done it. You have not studied the percentage. How much is nitrogen? How much is oxygen? Then water vapor, CO2.
Nitrogen is 74 or 3. I'm not sure.
Nitrogen is 78%.
Yeah.
Oxygen is 21%, which together makes 99% of the atmosphere. But that 1% which you think is very insignificant is very, very significant, because you will be surprised to know that CO2, how much is CO2? In that 1%, how much is CO2?
0.0 something, I think 2 or 3, not sure.
Yes, it's 0.03 to 0.04%. That's the total CO2 that's present in the atmosphere, and that's creating all the ruckus. So that's where people, those who cannot understand the dynamics of ecosystem think that, what are you talking about? CO2 is causing a problem in global warming. CO2 is 0.04%. Even if we keep on running all the industries on coal, we will not be able to make it go beyond 1%. But what are you talking about? That 0.03 to 0.04 is too much. If it goes above 0.05, if it reaches 0.06, we all are, much of life will be gone from the planet. So it's a very delicate balance, though it doesn't seems like that mathematically, but yes. And most of the gas in that 1% is water vapor. So water vapor is a lot of water vapor is in the atmosphere that controls your humidity. So areas are very, very humid. Some regions are so humid that the humidity there is almost 98%, so even saturated to 100%, where you cannot add any more water in the atmosphere. You cannot evaporate any more water in the atmosphere. Anyways, yes, so atmosphere can vary. So if you are saying air or atmosphere, you should use examples like CO2 and methane, not oxygen majorly, because oxygen is fairly stable in that account. Okay. And yes, and anything else? Oxygen is done, sorry, air is done, temperature is done. What else? You're missing water, right? Isn't water very important? How is water very important? I'm just discussing through these things so that we can understand when we will be studying factors affecting population like predation, etc. better. When we'll come to population attributes, we have to talk about density. There the reason will be growth. So why growth, density, all these matter. So water, how is water important? How it influences?
Essential component of life for every organism.
Yes, again, but and organisms have evolved with respect to water. So if you look at the desert organisms, they have evolved to adapt in less water. Okay, it's not like they are just managing in less water. They have evolved, they have adapted. So if you give them a lot of water, it's not like they will very happily drink all that water. They will not drink all that water, right? They will, they will still behave through their adaptations, correct? So, and if you forcefully make them drink, which we cannot, but let's say hypothetically, they will die. Similarly, an organism which lives in water-rich areas and depends on water, like amphibians, if you put them in deserts, they will die. Okay, so these adaptations for organisms also depends on water, and water is of two types on our planet. What is that? Any idea? What two types of water sources are present on Earth? Fresh water and marine water, okay, which is also known as saline water. So also the adaptations are different for organisms who survive in fresh water and those who survive in marine water. Okay, there are also some regions called lagoons, or if you know about Dead Sea is so much of salinity. The salinity of Dead Sea is so high that the water there is so dense that things, which are lighter than that density just float on that sea. It doesn't go inside. It doesn't drown into that Dead Sea. So Dead Sea is not a sea actually, it's a bound by land area. It's a very big lake, but it's so big that it's called Dead Sea. Anyways, so these regions are called hypersaline, very, very saline regions. They also affect. And water is done, air is done, temperature is done. Anything else? Sunlight?
Sunlight,
Yes, great, sunlight. So how does sunlight affect?
photosynthesis.
Yes, so different regions have different daylight durations. So there are certain regions on the planet where daylight is available, like equatorial regions where daylight is very, very intense and you get intense sunlight for very long hours, some more than 12 hours, you get intense daylight. And there are regions where you just get the sunlight or intensity is very low, or you just get it for 6 to 8 hours. So that also affects what kind of plants can survive there. And because it affects the photosynthesis rate of the plant, it also affects the production of food through that photosynthesis. And that's where the species that have adapted with respect to that sunlight availability cannot survive in a very, very intense light available regions, and vice versa again, right? And sometimes you will see that organisms that cannot cope up with temperature and light, they migrate. There are migratory patterns shown. So you will see that the example is some birds, long range migratory birds from Europe. When Europe gets too cold, it's almost covered with the ice sheet, certain birds cannot survive there in that cold. So they move towards hotter regions, which means they move towards the equator, come to the temperate and tropical region. and lay there. So that's their long migratory season where they come, they live, they mate, lay eggs, babies grow, and then when summer starts, after some months, they again go back to the region where they belong. Do you understand that? Migrations. So migrations are often, and migration is a population phenomena. It's not just an organism phenomena. So you should know that these factors also affect population. So migration is cued by temperature. So what tells these birds? Who goes and tells, okay, they don't have a calendar with them, right? Who tells them, okay, now you should start flying in groups, huge groups, and start going towards India and Pakistan and Sri Lanka and all these regions, or the Gulf regions, where you will find good light and temperature and also water, which you will not. So it's temperature. The moment temperature starts falling, humidity starts dropping, light starts becoming shorter and shorter, they know that this is the time. Okay, so that is one thing. And the global warming effect is also affecting their migratory patterns. And you should know that when we say that these are subtle changes, but these are not subtle changes. If these birds don't get a cue in time, they will not start their journey at time. They will not reach the place they should reach at time. So they will not get food enough before they start flying, and they end up dying on the way, because it's a very long journey. They do not get proper cues. By the time they reach there, the environment here is so hot that is also not tolerable to them, and they reach and they die. They cannot go back. So perturbing their pattern, their cycle, is also one of the consequences of global shift in the climate. So climate change is real. It's here. We can see it. Those who can just manage to take their heads off their very limited life and look at the broader picture with data, they will realize, yes, it is there, it's changing, and we have to start thinking about it. We cannot just be a profit oriented species anymore, because one day there'll be no earth, then there'll be no profit as well. Okay, great. So light is one factor. Cool. And anything else that affect? In a very long run, I think earth itself, which we call as, what do we call earth? Very fine powdered earth is called, where plants grow. How can I forget that word? Soil. Sorry. So soil itself. What is soil actually, people? What is soil? Soil. You must have seen soil, right? Is no one answering, or I'm not able to hear anyone?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah, so what is soil? Temperature.
So how
It
are
is
we
the earth
supposed
in
to
which plants
explain that?
grow. I'm not sure how to
Exactly.
describe.
How are you supposed to explain soil? No one asked us before what is soil. You can just show it easily. Take a handful of soil and say this is soil. But it's a good question how to explain it. And let me give you some specifics. So explain me in a way of its origin. So where does soil come from, and where does it, how is soil basically formed? What is it, soil? It is earth only, which is over a very long period of time, due to weathering of rocks. So it keeps grinding and forms the soil. So when you go to a desert area and you see all that sand loosely there blowing with the wind, where no plant can grow, you cannot even walk on it. You need those adaptations that camels have to walk on sand. So where all that sand came from? Let me give you an example. Anyone has been to a riverbed? Riverbed, beach?
Yes, sir, but it was long ago.
Yeah, any time. Like, you have been to a beach?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What do you find on a beach? You find sand only, right? Don't you
Yes,
find
and
sand
small
only?
water.
Yeah, water and sand. And if you remove water from it, then all that sand kept for days drying in sun without any water, loose, will keep on becoming finer and finer and finer and finer, and will just be the sand in the desert, right?
Yes.
So if there is nothing to hold on to the soil, to keep it tight and granular, it will degrade to become very fine, which is useless. So very fine soil is not useful because it has very low water retention capacity. If you drop, so you can see that if you take a bucket full of sand versus a bucket full of soil, alluvial soil, or all the different kind of soil, black soil, alluvial soil, red soil, I'm sure you know that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and sand. If you keep that, pour a bottle of 1 liter of water, you will see that water will just go through the sand and come out, correct? Sand cannot hold water,
Yes.
but other soils can hold. But over time, if the plantation decreases, the soil is free to be weathered by the air, by the drying temperature, air. So air will just continuously keep it moving from one place to another and keep grinding it finer and finer, and it will be like the sand you find in the desert, which is not at all fertile. You cannot grow anything in that. So that also affects the organism. In fact, it affects the whole biome itself. So these are the factors that I have listed, which we just discussed, and you should know that. Write down these factors shape biomes, and hence they shape organisms. And because organisms make populations, so they also affect populations. But they affect populations formation. Okay. If organisms do not survive, population can't be formed. So that's simple. Is that okay? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So we talked about these factors and what adaptation they bring to organisms. Now, keeping all of this in mind, let's quickly come to population. So was this discussion, did this discussion made it clear in your head that what parts we are going to take further and what parts are just exclusive to organisms, right? So that was important to discuss. Okay, now let's talk about population. So how will you define populations, people? How will you define population?
A group of organisms that can live together. And
Yes, that live together, that's all, right?
also, I
Is
think
that-
they can also interbreed with each other.
That is species. So most of the times when we talk about population, we talk about one species population. So what you are saying also applies to population. But let's say I'm not talking about even if we take multiple species in the same genus, making a population in a forest, let's say. So potentially they interbreed, because most of the time what sticks together is one species. They stick together all the time if they're social animals, or in other ways also. So when we define population, we don't only just take into consideration that it's a group of organisms that live together, but we also take into consideration that where they live. So the group that live together in a well-defined, specific geographical area. Remember niche that I just told you about? So niche is in the organism part. So probably teachers just leave it. But when we define population, we are actually defining it through defined geographical area. And these area share, so all these, these areas share or have similar resources, right, where the populations live. Okay. So a population has certain characteristic feature. Can you think of what are the characteristics or attributes of a population which are not present in an individual organism? So I already gave you a hint by discussing organisms. So take a minute, just allow me a minute, I'll be back. Think of attributes, and when I'll come back and randomly ask someone to answer at least a couple of attributes that you will only find in a population and will not find in individual organisms. Okay, is the question clear, everyone? Is someone at my door? I'll just come back in a minute. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, everyone, I'm back. Am I audible and visible?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so have you thought about it? Let's first define population. Anyone who wants to define population, like if they have already defined population in their schools? Just define. I think I just told you, just put it in good words and define it. Just the definition of population, people. I think I'm sure you must have defined population, right? What else is there to study in this chapter? Okay, so no one. Okay, so let me just write down. Population is a group of organisms that lives together in a well-defined geographical region, sharing similar resources, and potentially also interbreeds among themselves, Now remember, when I'm saying interbreeding, you might be thinking that it's because this term breeding and interbreeding is associated with sexual reproduction, correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, but we know that there are many organisms that can reproduce asexually. So if there is a group of asexually reproducing organisms, will I call it a population or not? Because they cannot interbreed among themselves. But will it be called a population or not?
It will be called a population.
Yes, it will be called a population. So you can write down that a population can also arise from asexual reproduction, but must have the but must have the other characteristics that's we defined for population. Okay, so even if it's a asexually reproducing group of organisms, but they are present in a well-defined geographical regions, sharing or competing. It can also be, because always it's not just sharing of resources. By sharing, I also mean competing for the same resources. Like all the tigers in a particular grassland competes for all the deers, and all the deers they mostly don't compete, but they share all the grasses, the grass, the vegetation, right? So if you talk about population examples, anything that you define the geographical conditions of will act as a population. Even bacteria in a culture plate. So that plate is in your hand. On that hand, there are millions and millions of bacteria growing. But for that bacteria, that plate is a geographical condition where there are certain nutrients available, certain nutrients are not available. The food, the humidity, the conditions, the presence of antibiotics or absence of antibiotics, everything is defined. So that will also be called a bacterial population. So something like a bacteria in a culture plate to all the let's say all the fox in the jungle, or all the birds in a wetland, or all the anything, all the rats in a particular dwelling in a particular area, they all are called populations. Okay, so why we study population is because many things in evolution only make sense. Remember, evolution only takes care about the population. It does not takes care of the individuals, right? Though individuals give rise to population, but if you think that there is one person, like humans don't fit well in the category where we don't care about the organism, but we care about the population. We do care about organisms. That's why we save. That's why we help every individual possible. So let me give you an example. So the rule of nature is, and those who are not physically or mentally or physiologically fit in nature won't survive, maybe, to give rise to progeny. So their generations won't carry on, right? They will perish. So imagine a deer, which is a prey, or a lion, which is a predator, born with a deformity that it cannot walk properly or run properly. Do you think it's going to survive enough to give rise to kids? Yes, no? People?
No.
No, right? In nature, it won't. But when it comes to human society, our society has moral fabric that we have created. That's not the law of the nature. That's law of humanity, because we have decided certain rules for ourselves that makes us different from wild animals. So if in a human population, we get someone who is differently abled, who's not able to run properly, we still provide all the aids and all the opportunities, because it's a fundamental birthright. There are freedoms and rights given to every individual who is born in the human race, correct? Yes or no? So here, where the cruel rule of nature or evolution or jungle is not being followed, that person can go on to give rise to progenies, and the genes will be passed on. not just the bad ones, but the good ones also. Maybe that a person is brilliant, with intelligence, with mind, with thought process, or with other things, but not that good with skeletal muscles of the leg or of the hand. Okay, but that it does not mean that the person cannot contribute to the society. Maybe it can contribute more than many other people who are just doing very well with the skeletal muscles. So that is the difference between us and the populations that operate in the wild. Okay, is that clear? So that's where, to understand evolution and ecology, studying population dynamics is very important. Write down: population dynamics are crucial to understand ecology, population genetics, and evolution. Ecology, population genetics, and evolution in general. Now, before I went, I asked you a question. What are the different attributes or characteristics of a population which does not apply to an organism? Anyone thought of anything? Individual organism. Yes, anyone thought of anything? No? So first point is individual or individuals have birth and death, right? So they begin and they end. But do populations begin and populations end? Taking into, like, keeping extinction out, do they have a specific birth and death? Can you tell that when will all the ants will die? Or can you tell that when did all the ants came up?
Yes.
No. So individuals have birth and death, but populations, what do populations have? They have birth rate and death rate. So it's what is birth rate? When you talk about human population, we talk about the birth rate and death rate. It is the number of individuals born, okay, per 1,000 individuals in a given time frame. Let's say in a year, the birth rate was this. If the birth rate was 2, which means there were 2,000 new individuals added per 1,000 individuals. So the birth rate was exactly double. Okay. And death rate is the number of death, like the percentage of death per fixed, like 1,000 or 100, whatever criteria you choose, of the population. So they have a rate with which, so populations shrink or they expand. They never, like, just begin from scratch and then just go away like individuals. Is this part clear?
Yes, sir.
So birth rate and death rate simply means per capita, which means per 100, per capita births and per capita death. Okay. So it's a change in number. That's all. Okay. So if I say that in a jungle there were, let's say, 20 big cats or 20 tigers, okay, in 2021, Then in the same jungle, now there are 30 tigers in 2022. So can you tell me what is the birth rate? What is the rate of, because the population is increased, so what is the rate of increase of population?
One by 3, 33%.
33%. Think again. 33% is, so you, the increase is in 10. So 10 of 30 is 33%. But the change happened in this population. Always remember. So this is very simple things where you make mistakes and our marks go away. So it seems very, very simple, but it is not exactly that simple. So I never, judge a question that it's very simple. You cannot make you can make mistake in everything. I also do. So this change of 10 happened in this population, right? Not in this population. This is the final population. Okay. So what is the change? 10. So we'll keep 10 over 20. What is the change? 0.5, which means 0.5 offsprings per tiger per year. This is the rate of change of the population. Okay. Do you understand, everyone?
Yes, sir.
And if I say the total, the gross percent change that has happened is in this population is 50%, because what was the initial population of was 20, then if you add 50% to it, it will become 30, right? Is it clear?
Yes.
So the first attribute is clear to you?
Yes.
I think we are okay. We are out of time. So we'll continue with other attributes in the next class of population. And we'll also get to know about different population pyramids. We'll discuss all of it in the next class then. So this is where let's end the class here. Okay. I'll see you all in the next class. Bye-bye, people. See you. Any doubts? Okay, bye-bye. And please, for those who have already done this chapter, please revise and come a little prepared so you can push the discussion in a better manner. Okay. Bye-bye.